Don't you hate it when somebody manages to sum up in 30 seconds something that you've been struggling to put into words for years? The other day, I was watching a James Pops's video about style in photography, and he hit the nail on the head when he talked about why this myth about style being important seems to have taken hold of most people who own a camera these days. He purported that style in photography was very important back when most people in photography were looking to make a living from their camera, that having a style set you apart from the people around you. It made the clients feel comfortable because they knew what they were going to get. But these days, most people are not looking to make money from their camera. So why is style still important to them? How's it? I'm feeling a little bit better today, which is kind of fantastic because I've been feeling crook the whole week. And people are asking about coffee in here. It used to be coffee. It's now switched to green tea because my health check the other day was not great. So we need to go on not just a healthy kick, but also kind of get that blood pressure bit down. Maybe I should stop making YouTube videos. Stop. But the style in photography it's one of the things. On one hand, I think it's not important. On the other hand, I'm well aware that I have a definitive style, and people look at it and they go, "That's an Alex Kilby photograph." But how did I arrive at this point? Because I kind of found that I never set out to actually work on a style. It just kind of seemed to happen. So I think if you go back and we trace the evolution of this kind of style, maybe it'll give you some pointers about where your own direction in photography lies and whether or not style is actually something that you think it is. For me, that style all stems from knowing the technical aspects of photography. Until I went to photo school and I started, really jumping into the ideas of exposures and f-stops and how all these things kind of work, I wasn't really in control of the process at all of taking a photograph. I was, letting the camera do most of the work. And it kind of comes back to this age-old adage of you can't break the rules until you know them, kind of thing. Because the more that I could just push those to one side and have it feel like that was just second nature, the easier it was for me to start actually channeling some of the ideas that I had in my head through the camera and hopefully into a print. And these ideas, they all came from just, really just being like a sponge, looking at photography. I'd been vaguely interested in photography as an outlet when I was in my teens. And then I started really I jumped in with both feet, that I was reading magazines, I was going to the library, looking at photographs, thinking about images, had a little black book, which I wish I still had. It was a tiny little A5 hardback exercise book that CNA in South Africa used to sell. And I would see an idea for an image, or I'd watch something and I would sketch it down like a little picture. That I was always kind of like a magpie, pulling bits of ideas around. And I have to wonder how important that was, even though I wasn't aware of it. Nobody sat me down and gone, do you know, Alex, you really need to make a collection of all the photographs. These days, videos that talk about, creating your own style or something, they talk about using a Pinterest board and things of that nature. And while, of course, that's very helpful, but the big problem I feel with that approach is that it feels like it's very structured. Like right now, I am going to sit down and I am going to work on my photographic style. Please do not interrupt me for the next 45 and a half minutes. It doesn't work like that. Certainly for me, it has always just been like a little bit here and a little bit there and things of that nature. And that kind of leads me on to the next part. I used to be consumed with this idea that I could win photography. That if somehow I could get a defined style, that if my work would be instantly recognizable, it would then become famous. And then everybody would beat a path to my door, and I would be heralded as the next greatest photographer since Irving Penn, who incidentally, there's an exhibition on next year in San Francisco, and I'm going to go and check it out. So if you're interested in maybe, popping along, let me know in the comments. That useful early 20s kind of thing of like that, that brashness about, finding a style. That's not true. For me, it became too much. And especially when I kind of realized that, I'm not actually that talented as a photographer. I'm like, that it wasn't going to be how I imagined it in my head, that I took a little step back and I go, do you know what? Actually, okay, it's little steps. It's just incremental growth. It's not something, this developing of a photographic style, that you can schedule and work on like building up muscles or something like that. It's just a continuous process. When I first got started in photography in the early 90s, while I did kind of think of myself as a certain type of photographer, I went into photo school thinking I was going to be a landscape photographer, and I came out thinking I was a portrait photographer. It wasn't, as far as I was aware, as prevalent that you had people attaching labels to themselves. I did because I was in a commercial environment. I was training to be somebody who was going to make money from photography. The idea of style, once again, rears its head in the more traditional sense, as James pointed out. But obviously this is prior to the explosion of the internet. Nowadays, it seems, certainly whenever I speak to somebody who is doing like a one-on-one or in the cohorts or what have you, that they often will refer to themselves as a street photographer or a landscape or some sort of qualifier at the beginning, rather than just being open to any kind of photography. And that was an important aspect. I said I went into photo school thinking I wanted to be a landscape photographer. I hated photographing people, anything to do with people. Oh my God, no, absolutely not. And I come out as a portrait photographer. This is because I was forced to take photographs in different genres. I was forced to explore ideas and approaches to photography that, had I been left to my own devices, I would never have done. Like, absolutely not would have photographed somebody. So getting rid of this label of being a certain type of photographer, I think goes so far to just kind of taking some of the blinders off that sort of inhibit finding a bit of a style. There's something else that also doesn't really happen the same way that it used to, which is giving feedback. It's helpful to have somebody who can look at your work objectively and say, this now feels like it is your photograph. I see you in these images. That's what I feel a style is. When I can look at somebody's work and I go, okay, that feels like it's your photograph. This feels like it's not. Just today, I was looking at a photographer's work, and they'd shown me a big selection, as some people want to do when they first sort of engage in talking one-on-one with me, or maybe other photographers who have a similar experience, that there's a broad range of images just to see what kind of sticks. And in that lot, I can see, okay, well, that feels like it's you, that feels like it's you, that feels like it's you, and these don't. It's that kind of feedback that is so helpful when you can find it. Because somebody's looking at your work from outside. James, earlier, I said he summed up some of the problem that I've been having with thinking about style, and there we go. Okay, now I can see it a lot clearer. So having somebody look at your work objectively, that's not a random person online who just sits there and goes, oh, your tree's wrong and this is wrong. That's not about developing style. That's about that person telling you how much they think they know about photography. Look, find, listen to the people who are willing to discuss with you and guide you in the directions that they think might benefit you. That was a huge thing for me at photo school, because I was around people who could offer up suggestions. And that leads me very neatly to this point about inspiration. I had that little book, sketching the ideas and stuff like that. But what really fed all that was being around libraries of photographic imagery that I could just look and go, oh, I like this, I like that. I'm feeding that memory bank. Going to places that were not necessarily photography related either. There's so many people, I think, when they're looking for inspiration about photography, that they sit there and go, I'm going to go and only look at photography. But the photographers whose work I really admire, they're the ones, they're coming from the outside. They are bringing in external influences into their photography. They're looking at paintings, at sculpture, at architecture, all the other creative outlets, even books. Sometimes I had an idea for a photograph from an idea that has been conjured in my imagination by text on a page. How are you going to Pinterest that? Right? This is kind of what we're talking about. And wherever you can find inspiration, just absorb it. So many, I think, photographers are out there thinking that there's going to be like a big bang, like a flash, and I've now got my style. It's only when you start to draw inspiration from all sorts of people, make it into your own, realize that there's a process that goes on with this that we can't force. It needs to be natural, that you can't just go, I'm going to be working my style this weekend. Style in photography, it is so hard to talk about, because for me, as I said, it's not that important, but I'm very aware that I have a style. And I want to say to you, if you are struggling with this idea of like, oh my God, I need to have a style, that was my journey, how I found it. Hopefully you can find within those some clues into your own journey with photography. If you are super desperate about having a very definitive style that will make you stand out on Instagram or have a very lovely looking curated feed or something like that, then make a decision to work towards that stuff. But no, there aren't people outside going, oh, that photographer doesn't have a style, they're no good. Right? There isn't that sort of thing there. Ultimately, what matters is that you are happy taking photographs. And I hope that some of the insights, some of my own story and experiences with this has helped you along the way. And if you want to find out how I really kind of mucked all sorts up when I got started in photography, check this video over here. It is full of the follies of youth. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.